Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. And now, celebrating 15 years of broadcasting, here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again, whether tuning in on the radio dial here in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM or through WYADonline.com. We're glad you all could be back with us. Also, those joining us through our friends online through iHeartRadio, we're glad you all could be with us as well. I'm really excited to welcome actress and comedian Renee Santos to our program today. Renee's making her first appearance on our program this year to talk to us not only about the journey of doing what she loves, but also, of course, the power of performing, what it's been like for her to share that with all of you, and, of course, let you guys know what's coming up. If you're just not hearing about Renee, of course, we'll let you know at the end of our segment how you can stay connected with her. But, Renee, hello to you and welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, the pleasure's definitely all mine, Renee. So, Renee, let's start where we are today. Here we are in 2019. You've been able to do, Renee, what is the goal or dream, or at least the ambition of a lot of people, that is to be able to decide what you want in life and then to go for it. I mean, what has it been like for you to kind of look at what you've been able to achieve and the things that you have coming up?
I would say I think a lot of times people give up on their dream too early because they think there's a timeline. And I think in order to be successful as an artist, you have to be willing to not have a timeline. I think the greatest quote ever said to me that I live by is that infinite patience produces immediate results.
I think
really
that's so powerful.
That. So that's my motto.
Yeah, and no, I was just going to say, I think that is a great way to be able to look at it. So I'm curious then, Renee, have you always had that perspective, the idea that if you wanted something, it was going to take time?
I have not. In my early 20s, not to age myself, I wanted everything immediately, like I think everybody does in their 20s, right? We have an aspiration, and then we're like, okay, so my timeline is 2 years. And then the longer I was alive, I realized, that is the most unrealistic timeline because, when I would acclimate to a new city, sometimes just to find regular work, to pay my rent, like it would take me a year or so just to kind of get my feet established in order to survive and eat, and then I was able to embark on my career. So I was a little unrealistic, and I'm like, I'm going to have to feed myself before I do stand-up,
And now, of course, to be able to do it, I mentioned to you before we went on here, Renee, one of the things I did in prepping for your segment, I was on your website, and we'll give that out a little bit later, but, I think the reflection has to be pretty cool, too, because you've been able to do, commercials, television shows, of course, stand-up, which is what a lot of people have gotten to know you from. Do you have those wow moments when you kind of look at what you've been able to do at this point?
I do. It's I actually had a wild moment filing my taxes this year, as odd as this sounds. I never thought the IRS would enlighten me, but in the past few years, I had filed a lot of my actor comedy expenses under hobby. And, this year I was on this precipice where the IRS was like, you have to claim it as a business. And it sort of hit me like, wow, I'm actually a professional artist, to the point where the IRS is saying you can't say this as a hobby. And
wow.
And it was this sort of like shift in me. I had a knowing. One of the most empowering things I ever did as an artist is I opened a doing business as account with $1 because somebody told me if you act as if you just start a business account, the universe will start to fill that account, whether you have the money or not. And it was more of just an affirmation that I was choosing this, whether I could put any money in that account. And as I slowly have seen that grow and that account become necessary, I realized that I was sort of aligning myself with the universe to give me more. And it's made this journey so worth it. I try to think of my life like a movie, and it would be so uninspiring if I woke up, it was like, I wanted to be a stand-up, and then the next day I just had it.
Yeah.
It's
right.
It's the ebb and the flow, and some days I feel empowered, other days I feel discouraged, and it's sort of this magical dance that I've been doing for over a decade. Shh, don't tell anybody.
Well, and you've been doing it for over a decade. And the other thing that I thought was so interesting about you, Renee, that I'm sure you get commended on is the courage. For one, because you put it literally all out there, right? I mean, you're able to, just by talking about things that are real life experiences, you're able to get people to laugh, but also to think. You also are not afraid to tackle topics or individuals that you deem appropriate, at the time. Where does that courage come from, do you think? Is that something you've always had, or is that something that you have grown into?
I think it is sort of innate. I've had this inadvertent defiance, which I didn't always know was a defiance. I remember growing up, I have a very religious Catholic mother, and I went to Catholic school when I was young, and I remember raising my hand when I was 8 years old and just asking why it was called the 10 Commandments and not the 10 Commitments. Because I'm like, well, it's a good list of things to follow, but I don't understand why we have to command it and scare people with them. And I got kicked out of Catholic school, and the nuns hated me. And really, it was just a natural inquiry that was innate in me, and I didn't realize I was being defiant. And I think a lot of the times with my comedy, I get described as defiant when I'm just observing what I think other people observe but aren't able to speak about in fear of judgment or displacement or, and I almost feel like it's my duty. It's my way of being of service to humanity, because I don't think what I experience is necessarily unique. I just think I'm able to share it. And for a long time, I didn't realize that in and of itself was a gift, is the willingness to be seen. I think ultimately that is the greatest contribution we can give, is just being willing to be seen. Right.
That's it. And I think, again, a gift that you've been able to give to other people. I want to say, for those who are just tuning in, either on the radio side or online, you're listening to Conversations Live. We're excited to welcome Renee Santos to our program today. She's an actress and comedian who's been able to do work that she loves, but also has been able to thrill audiences as well. We're going to let you guys know how to stay connected with Renee, as well as, of course, where you can find her coming up this summer. So I want to talk about the response. I mean, here you are, you're living your life fearlessly in a lot of ways, Renee. What is it like for you to hear from people about how something that you've tweeted or something that you've said on stage has resonated with them and also inspired them?
It's pretty much the most rewarding thing in the world. I'm sure if you have listened to my comedy, I'm very transparent about my sobriety. I've been sober for over 9 years, and I remember when I did a convention for like a recovery convention, and I remember somebody saying to me when I walked into the convention, well, you're not saving lives. And at the end of the convention, I had 2 women ask me to sponsor them. And they stayed in contact with me. They've now been clean a number of years. And what I realized is my comedy was saving their lives. Because what I remember is when I was early in my recovery, I didn't even think it was possible to laugh. And for people who are trying to change their lives and they see that we're present and we can be happy, joyous, and free and laugh at our own fallibility, it gives other people permission to do the same thing and not to attach shame to the fact that we all fall. And, for a long time people said, don't talk about your addiction. And I thought, people need to know that addicts also look like me and they sound like me, and that not every addict is pushing a shopping cart down the street. Although those people are also inspirational, that's not my story. And I think a lot of people are not able to change their lives because we're taught that it looks like one thing. And so I believe my transparency for all that I am, whether it's I'm Latina or I'm a lesbian or I'm a recovering addict or I grew up in foster care, when I walk into a room, people never guess those things about me. And I think my presence and my comedy just teaches people to be careful how we place judgment.
And that goes to another point I mentioned to you. I don't like to spring things on people. Renee is not quite my style. Other people may not have a problem with it, but anytime I see something that I think might be a point of interest for my audience, I always love to kind of give my guests a heads up. And one thing that you have on your Twitter is, that performing is your ministry. And that really struck me because I look at this platform that I have, that I've been able to share over the years as part of my ministry as well. What is it like for you to come to that realization? Because with that comes a certain amount of responsibility. So how does that feel to be able to embrace that?
That's a really interesting question. Yeah, for a long time I tried to sum up what I did, and I realized that I've always been really drawn to a spiritual community, non-denominational. For me personally, religion has never resonated for me, but I've always really connected to a higher power guiding me. And for me, I didn't feel like I chose stand-up comedy. I felt like it chose me, and I surrendered to it. And what I realized through honoring that purpose is that this was how I could inspire and change. And for a long time I thought, well, a ministry meant that you were, theorizing on theological texts or whatever. I had this attachment to what it looked like to be a minister. And then I thought, I'm like an artistic minister. And it made sense because to me, it feels very spiritual. Oftentimes when I get up on stage, I simply feel like a messenger. There are times I walk off stage and I can't even believe I said something, or somebody comes up to me after, and I didn't even realize that I said it. And one of the things I say right before I ever step onto a stage is, use me, God, so I may know the joy of being used by you. And I say that to myself before I ever walk on a stage. And that's truly what I believe this is. I'm just plugged in. We all have access to be messengers. I don't think I'm better than anybody else. I'm simply just downloading the files. We all have access to them. It's just some people choose not to plug in. And so for me, that's what stand-up and performing is. It has been my ministry. It's how I've been able to affect change in other people and in my own life. And it has taught me to be courageous and brave. And I have a friend that just recently decided to go back to school to become a pilot because they saw my comedy. And I realized this isn't about an artist trying to be an artist. Sometimes when we just honor what our life purpose is and we share it, it inspires people to honor whatever their purpose is. And it doesn't need to be the same as mine.
That is so true. And that's so powerful, too, Renee, I think. But I think also that can be for some people heavy, right? I mean, there was this one, quote that is always out there, to whom much is given, much is required. I mean, how do you keep it fun? How do you go out there and say, that you want to be used and that you want someone to get something from it, but also keep the joy in it?
I'm not a master at this, I must say. There are times where I put out an intention and it can be sort of an odd... It doesn't work as well as I wanted to. I recently performed where I got this feat. Sometimes I will curse in my act, partly as creating that juxtaposition of, I think, feminine energy is supposed to come out very soft. And so I sometimes intentionally throw some swears in there just to sort of bring light to the fact that women can also have like a hardness to it, and it's more of a caricature. And I recently performed when someone said, "Oh, you're too pretty to be swearing," and there was all this judgment of what I should sound like and how I should, and it threw me for a loop. And I was worried, like, oh my gosh, am I just that person that gets up there and swears and I have nothing inspirational and I have fooled them and this is an illusion and it's not really a ministry and I can go off on this spin where I'm like, oh no, I just said a swear, which means I'm a horrible artist. And I can allow that feedback to sometimes take me down. And I have to remember that this, like you said, there's a responsibility. If I am putting myself out in the world as a public figure, I have to be willing to take public feedback, and I'm not always going to like it. And part of what makes me courageous is knowing who I am, because people will make a judgment based on a 7-minute set and not my entire experience. And I have to take that with a grain of salt. And I ebb and flow with that. Sometimes it's pretty hard, and other times I handle it very well, But yeah, it's a slippery slope. Like there are definitely days where I feel responsibility. I opened I remember when I opened for Wanda Sykes in the Dominican Republic, and at first, the only reason I mention her name is there was a lot of feedback I got about, oh, that must be so exciting, and oh my God, you've made it, and whatever, that pressure. There was this odd amount of pressure where it wasn't even me attaching myself to that name. But then when I got there, what I realized is no one was interested in Renee Santos. They were just waiting for me to finish so they could see Wanda's heights, you know? And that there was this odd responsibility I had where I had to bring them on board. I had to prove myself because I wasn't a celebrity. I wasn't known. And I had to show the world that somebody just gave me this platform to open for a celebrity, and I now need to show these people that I belong on this stage.
That's so true. You know? And you know what? Even in your sharing that, Renee, I think, the big lesson I took from just that story is the importance of recognizing that we all have a space. And I think being able to walk into that space and to own it. And that's what you've been able to do. And I think, that's the cool thing about this, whether we're talking about stand-up or television or, commercials, being able to own your space, whatever that space might be, and because who knows what can come from that opportunity and from that moment for sure. I mentioned, of course, you have some events that's come up. I mean, do you find that stand-up is the thing for you then, Renee, that is where you do feel the most alive out of all the other types of performing that you do?
Not necessarily. I've been very blessed to have this platform, and it's given me a lot of opportunities. But my goal, my larger vision for my life, is to be a comedic actress. And I think stand-up comedy, kind of like Seinfeld or Amy Schumer or Tiffany Haddish, where I believe it's given me a voice so that it's clear what I bring to, what I bring as a person, but I do believe it's sort of a conduit to the next thing for me. Not that I don't love doing live performance. There is something really stellar about getting an immediate response from a crowd. I don't think I would ever abandon it, but I do have a vision for it to sort of evolve into me being able to be a comedic actress, and so it has its rewards. There's live performance has a lot of pressure. When you film something, you have pressure on set, but then you can watch that thing over and over again and share it with an audience, and it's not nerve-wracking every time it's shared,
Right.
So.
Well, you've definitely given us, I think, a lot to be able to look at when it comes to not only, of course, what you've been able to do, Renee, but also, of course, what is possible for yourself and for others. Again, everyone, Renee Santos has been our guest. Renee, I mentioned you have a website. Let our audience know how they can stay connected with you.
Oh, awesome. Super easy. My website is just reneesantos.com. Renee is spelled with two E's, ReneeSantos.com. You can find me on Twitter at Renee Santos NYC, or on Instagram, Renee Santos LA NYC.
All right. So she's made it very easy for you guys. Renee, congratulations to you on everything again, and thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Cyrus. I appreciate it, too.
All right, and we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. I want to thank our good friend Zach Tepperman for setting up this conversation for us today, and thank all of you for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. If you all came in late, you missed part of the conversation with Renee, don't worry. Thanks to our online friends, you all can catch the replay right after we go off the air. The link is already available through our social media site, so head over to facebook.com/CyrusWebb or go to twitter.com/CyrusWebb. If you click on the link there, you can listen to the show completely for free and share with your friends from there, too. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Make sure you take out time to enjoy some good music as well as a great book. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live. Let's make it a great one.